right, welcome everybody to Error Correcting Erik, episode 16. And today we have a very special episode again because we are joined by the very, very lovely Logan Chipkin. Welcome, Logan.
Hey, Erik and Thomas, thanks for having me. Erik, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thomas, I wish I could say it was a pleasure, but we'll get through it.
Yeah, so
We'll try.
Logan is a friend of the podcast, a friend of Thomas. You've already met in real life, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think we have actually met in person, but
No?
it seems like we have. But at least, let's say we move in somewhat similar ideological circles, right? So let's put it that way.
All right,
We will be meeting in person pretty soon.
We will be, absolutely.
that's great. So we have roughly planned 1 hour. So first of all, Logan, welcome. So glad that you could be able to join us today. For the first part, we would just like to have a discussion with you, who you are, what you do, and what your role is in the David Deutsch ecosystem. And then for the second part, we would like to talk a bit about Conjecture Institute, if that's good for you.
Sure, I mean, the two are obviously pretty connected, but happy to talk about whatever you'd like.
All right, cool. So let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself and explain a bit who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Logan Chipkin. I'm president and co-founder of Conjecture Institute, which is a nonprofit that I founded along with David Kedmi and Aaron Stupple. Legally, we started maybe 12 months ago, something like that, but we kept it under wraps. We were doing a lot of background work, and officially we launched January of this year, roughly coinciding with the launch of our first book, The Souvereign Child, which was by Aaron Stupple and then with me as junior author. And what we do, one way to think about what Conjecture Institute does is we spread and apply humanity's deepest ideas. Another way to say it that we've been playing around with recently is it's optimism in action, or applied optimism in action, something like that. And so you can think about Conjecture Institute in terms of the products we put out there as belonging into one of three buckets. We have Conjecture Studios. That's our media arm, our animation stuff, kind of like our Disney arm. Conjecture Press, which is all of our books, which I'd be happy to get into because not only have we done a considerable amount on that front already, next year we have some exciting things coming out. And then we have Conjecture University, which is also very exciting. That consists of original research, mostly in physics, a little bit of math, and artificial general intelligence. And I guess you could even say Tom Hyde's Wonderism counts as being as part of original research. And also we have not yet, but part of Conjecture University will consist of free courses or maybe YouTube lectures and this sort of thing by our fellows. And then in addition to those three branches, of course, we do our in-person annual event. It was called Rat Fest. We just had ours. Maybe it was late September this year. We had 78 people or so, which was a record.
Nice.
And from now on, it's going to be called Conjecture Con. Yeah. And I'm talking with some venues now. Apparently because next year is America's 250th birthday, and Philadelphia is very significant to the founding of America. That, in addition to, apparently there are a bunch of sports events, so I have to get a venue sooner rather than later. I didn't know this until a buddy of mine told me. Wow. And then we might do other conferences during the year, maybe a physics conference, something like this. But that's very much pending. So that, in brief, is what Conjecture Institute is all about.
And maybe, I'd love to understand kind of obviously a little bit about maybe how you choose, or what is the process that you guys have in terms of like, choosing what product, what idea, what kind of, what are the criteria, I guess, that you apply and into putting that into practice? Because, there's so much, right? Like you could go from morality, as you said, to physics. You could go to, like, how do you productize that? How do you bring that, I guess, to market in a certain way? But I guess before maybe those details, I'd love to understand maybe about you personally. Like, what was your coming of age, let's say, story as it relates to, critical rationalism?
Yes. Basically, it's kind of poetic justice, if you like. Almost as soon as I finished college, so like standardized schooling, that's when I really started to learn. I've always been interested in science, philosophy, and writing and these sort of things, and I've always pursued all three of those. But in college, I kind of stagnated. And then towards the end of college, I started thinking more rigorously about all sorts of things. I started reading books. Mario Libio and Daniel Dennett in particular were very influential. And then I got a job that I hated, and it was kind of I guess, a quarter life crisis, existential thing. Like, why am I here? This is miserable. This sucks. But everyone's saying, like, no, this is what you do, whatever. So I kept reading more books, and this was it was probably either late 2015, early 2016. I read The Beginning of Infinity, and that was already after I probably only knew the word epistemology for like 6 months before that, but I had watched some lecture videos by, I wish I could find, I have no idea who the professor was or what the course was called, so I'll never be able to find it. But he was outlining the various philosophies of science that are out there: inductivism, deductivism, and then there's one where you define science by a set of attributes. And so I was already thinking, in terms of what is epistemology, what is science, this sort of thing. So I read The Beginning of Infinity, was totally blown away. Definitely did not understand all of it, but I understood a good amount. I had already learned economics before that, not long before that. After The Beginning of Infinity, I found constructor theory, but funnily enough, in hindsight, I looked at it and dismissed it immediately because I thought, oh, this is just another theory of everything. I don't care. Like, that's probably nothing.
Right.
I read The Fabric of Reality not long after that, and that really crystallized a lot for me. Just the way the ideas were just percolating in my mind, that really did it for me. And then over the next year or so, I read The Logic of Scientific Discovery by Karl Popper, learned constructor theory, and realized, oh, this is fascinating stuff. Went deeper into Austrian economics, and basically, it's been a journey ever since.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because sometimes for me, like the two books, Fabric of Reality and Beginning of Infinity, they almost like flow into one book now in my mind. Sometimes, like I sometimes think about different chapters, and I catch myself mistakenly like talking to Erik about a chapter of Beginning of Infinity while it's actually in the Fabric of Reality. So it's I guess kind of echoing that. Also, to me, it kind of put the whole thing together, almost, those two, what I felt was missing as well.
One way to think about the two books is The Fabric of Reality, it kind of all builds towards constructor theory. I don't want to cast a false history, but you can think of it this way. And then Deutsch discovers constructor theory, conjectures it, whatever you want to say. And then a lot of the implications of constructor theory, that formulates The Beginning of Infinity. So it's kind of like a roller coaster. Like Fabric of Reality builds up. Here's our worldview. Here are the open problems. Here's how maybe we can solve it. Constructor theory, okay, it solves some of these problems. And then, okay, Beginning of Infinity, philosophical optimism, and all that stuff comes out of that.
Yeah.
Right.
And can you briefly elaborate in your understanding, in your words, what constructor theory is?
Yeah, constructor theory, and by the way, this is something Conjecture Institute does a lot to support. Our senior scientist is Chiara Marletto, and she's one of the preeminent constructor theory physicists, if you like, constructor theorists. Constructor theory is a new theory in physics whose central principle is that all other theories in physics can be expressed in terms of transformations that are possible and transformations that are impossible, and why. Or instead of all other theories in physics, you could say all other laws of physics. So that's the central tenet, if you like, central conjecture. I was just writing about this actually for something for Conjecture Institute, and it sounds like a very simple idea, but it has a lot of counterintuitive implications. And what's called the prevailing conception in physics, that is the way people thought about theories in physics before constructor theory, was that you express theories in terms of initial conditions and laws of motion. So you think of Newtonian mechanics, most people are familiar with. You give a set of supplementary data in terms of initial velocity, initial position, and then you have laws of motion that say, okay, if the initial position and velocity are x, then the laws of motion I can use to calculate at any subsequent time t what the position and velocity will be later. Constructor theory takes a step back and says, in terms of Newtonian physics, since I'm already there, it would be a more general question rather than what will happen to the object whose trajectory we're calculating. What are all the physically allowable or physically possible trajectories that the object can have? So that's one way. There are a few ways to think of constructor theory. That's one way. Another is that it is a theory about theories, or its statements are laws about laws. In other words, they are principles. So a principle that we're already all familiar with. And I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Some of the work in constructor theory, I think, will be a much easier sell because we have things like principle of conservation of energy. So that it's taken for granted that if you conjecture a new theory in physics, it must conform to the principle of conservation of energy, or else the theory will be already problematic. It's not to say that a priori it's wrong, but that you would have to basically adjudicate between that theory and another theory that conforms to the principle of conservation of energy. And so that's one principle, but constructive theory you can think of as a whole bunch of such principles that constrain all what are called subsidiary theories or object level theories.
Right. So it kind of like explains things in terms of what is possible versus not possible, then, is also how I kind of understood
Correct.
it. Is that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's the simple way to say it, for sure.
Right. And just as we were talking about your journey, I guess, what, out of curiosity, what were you before, I guess, a critical rationalist? Like, what label would you have given yourself then?
I definitely would not have given myself any label. I don't know. But if you're asking what was my worldview,
Yes.
I'm sure I would have said follow the evidence and that sort of thing. In fact, and this connects to politics, connects to scientism, which I loathe. I remember there was and I was not political really at all until basically all these ideas I became interested in simultaneously. But in college, there was a presidential debate. It might have been Romney, Obama, or something like that. And something I didn't know. I didn't know anything about politics or economics, but Obama came off as valuing science more. And so I remember saying to my dad, "Oh, I would vote for Obama just because he knows science more." Which, given scientism, doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, I was probably, and I'm sure I was a garden variety lefty. I'm sure I wasn't a socialist, but yeah, I would have said we should just follow the evidence in science and in politics, and I'm sure there should be a redistribution of wealth, and I definitely would have been like someone who valued string theory just for the sake of it. I think I just would have said, "Oh yeah, of course." In other words, I would have been a reductionist.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I see.
Gotcha.
And you also said that you really started learning after you finished college. So is it correct to say that maybe in your college education you were lacking certain philosophical insights?
I didn't think about it one way or another. So I was a physics major, and I realized that you'd go to the lectures and they would just regurgitate what was in the textbook. So I just stopped going to the lectures and I would study the equation. And I always liked physics, like it was cool. But I didn't think about it too much more deeply than that. I would just learn the equations and how to do the problem solving and just solve the problems.
Yeah, I see. Okay. And after your new insight, what made you jump? Because you were a co-author on the book Sovereign Child. Sovereign Child. How did that happen?
The Sovereign Child in particular, or in general?
Both. Sure. Go ahead.
Well, like I said, I've always been into writing. So to cut a long story short, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I moved back to Philly just wanting to make it as a writer finally, and maybe a science communicator and that sort of thing. So writer and editor, and I've been friends with Aaron for a long time, and he knows that I'm a writer and editor. And when the opportunity came to Aaron to write The Sovereign Child, he contacted me and said, "You want to partner up on this?" And I said, "Of course." So that's how that happened.
All right, cool.
Right.
And then the jump to Conjecture Institute, how did that happen?
Yes. So we received the founding donation from Naval Ravikant. Again, I think it was roughly January of this year, something like that. Maybe December, maybe late January. Don't quite remember now. Maybe even early February. And basically, he had approached Aaron and me, and then we've always been friends with David Kedmi as well. So we said to David Kedmi, "Let's do it." So it was that simple.
And was this like a brainchild, I guess, that you had before, or was it kind of just a in the moment type of thing and stars aligned kind of, or was it something that you've been kind of, I guess, passionate and or kind of ambitious about previously?
I've definitely had various ideas about what we could do, what could we do that's different, what could we do that would make an impact. Ratfest was definitely kind of inspired by similar motivations. The first Ratfest was just in my living room where I am right now, and it was maybe 25 people, and I thought, oh, this is cool. No one else is doing this, to my knowledge, so let's keep doing it. Let's make it grow and grow and grow. And then I've had other ideas throughout the years, some of which panned out, some of which didn't. And then when the opportunity struck with the founding donation from the wall, we were like, we're all in. Let's do it.
Right. And then maybe let's go into, I guess, the Institute, because we see a lot of content out there, not only in I guess the products like the books and stuff, but also on the social media accounts you guys are posting, and I know you have some partnerships with Brett as well, I guess, and kind of making finding all those fellows and having them kind of, I guess, build out the environment that would ideally be suited, I guess, for the purposes of, let's say, scientific discovery or knowledge creation, I guess, more broadly. So how does that happen? Like, organizationally, do you guys have meetings? Who decides? How is that done?
Yeah, we don't, as you might imagine, we don't have official meetings. I mean, I meet with a lot of people for various reasons. People who are interested in what we're all about, people who want to partner with us, people who might want to donate, people who might want to become fellows. So I have, lots of meetings. But in terms of the, let's say, leadership structure, it's very egalitarian between Aaron, David Kedmi, and me, in the sense that no one's ideas are arbitrarily privileged above anyone else's. That's for sure. Of course, legally, since I'm president and they're co-founders and board members, there are slight differences, especially with respect to public-facing things, this sort of thing. For example, I did a Twitter town hall a couple months ago, and they, like, if they did it, I wouldn't have had a problem. But I think sometimes it just makes more sense for me to do it. But no, we sometimes the three of us will hop on a call. Mm-hmm. But you'd be amazed at how much we get done just by texting. Like, we text kind of not quite all day every day, but maybe 2 notches below that. We're just constantly updating, and then very often, to be honest, I have one-on-one calls with Aaron and David Kedmi about this, that, and the other, and we just call each other pretty randomly. So very rare do we have meetings. And then in terms of our interactions with the fellows, so one thing that I think makes us different than most other institutes in this space is that it's not just that the three of us are a management team. We are as involved with our fellows' work as they want us to be. Okay. And by us, to be frank, I usually mean me, although sometimes also David, Kedmi, and Aaron. So, but even then, it's not like I really rarely have meetings with fellows. Like, again, so for example, yesterday, a fellow who's doing some work for Conjecture Studios, and I'll just keep it vague because it's preliminary. Right. They contacted me and said, I have a script. Can you please review it for quality, story, the physics of it? And I said, yeah, of course, I'll have this to you by X date. Fellows send me book outlines, and I give feedback on that. And I forget what the question was now. I'll stop there.
Yeah, the management structure and all that stuff. But okay, so I guess let's get into the more interesting things, like what happens when there or has it happened, disagreements. And I guess obviously we all know that the source of knowledge creation is disagreement. In Popper's spirit. So obviously that's a good thing if people or it can be a good thing if people disagree. So but I guess from, as you said, from a legal perspective, maybe from an kind of a what to do next in the more imminent type decision making process, are there any that exist there, and how do you resolve those, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question, because someone tweeted the other day, like, do you guys have a tradition of criticism? And I didn't answer because I don't know. I just felt like it's not anyone's business the way we operate internally. Not that I'm not happy to answer I'm happy to answer your questions. This is much more appropriate of a venue. So the funny thing is, like, Aaron, David, Kedmi, and I, when I say we talk very often, we argue a lot, like a ton. We argue. It's constant. But it's totally seamless, and we all want the same thing. So it's not a big deal. Frankly, if anyone gets hot-headed, it's me, and that's just a personal flaw. So, I mean, what happens? It's very interesting to even ask, because they just kind of seamlessly, the disagreements kind of seamlessly resolve themselves most of the time.
Gotcha.
I wish I could think of examples. Sometimes, like, it's useful to have three people as well, I will say, because let's say Aaron and I have a disagreement, and so for example, I can remember a kind of benign example. When we were working on the glossary,
Right.
we had a disagreement over our explanation of one of the meme related selections. Aaron and I had a disagreement, and but neither of us were quite sure which way to proceed. So we just said, let's throw it up to DK.
Okay.
So sometimes it's democratic like that, where it's just like, let's have a third vote and see how it goes. But even that's never, it's never dogmatically that's the case. If the third person also said, I don't know, then we would figure it out. And then so that's that. So the disagreements, they kind of work themselves out most of the time. And then sometimes there are just areas where one of us, and again, this is all organic. We don't really like formally or inorganically make this happen, but there are just some domains where one of us no. Although I recently did jury duty for the first time. That was fascinating. Anyway, so some domains of what we do just end up being slightly more owned by one of us than the others. And then, so for example, I tend to own Conjecture Press, although Aaron and DK certainly do work on Conjecture Press as well. I don't mean to paint it otherwise. But I tend to just lead those efforts, and then I always keep them posted. And this is also just a function of the fact that I'm president means I think I have slightly more responsibilities than they do, but I always keep them apprised. Even today, someone emailed me with basically asking to be a fellow, and I forwarded it to Aaron and DK, and I just said I'm handling it. Right. But I have an intuition as well. Like sometimes I can tell where, oh, I shouldn't just handle this on my own. I really should consult DK and Aaron. So, and I'm sure I get that wrong sometimes, but we have a pretty good communication structure and relationships. It's nice when you work with friends, you can just be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, like, I guess, how do you want to proceed? Like, how do you proceed in that decision-making process in terms of, like, what to do first? Like, is it the glossaries, or is it, I guess the next book, or like the projects and all that things? Is it based on, I mean, I'm sure you get a lot of proposals and suggestions from quote unquote the community and wider. So do you take that into consideration, like in terms of what's popular, I guess, or is it really driven solely from like an internal perspective, or is there a kind of a market feedback process there somewhat?
I'm always open to hearing people's thoughts and ideas about what we should do. I mean, I'm never driven by, oh, this is popular, so we should do it. But if someone offers me an idea and I think it's a good idea, so if someone offers me an idea, let's say for ConjectureCon, I think this even happened. Someone said you guys should have a poster session, which we've never done before. And I've come to really be persuaded by that. But even if, let's say, 100% of the people of the, let's say, attendees last year said you should do a poster session, that still wouldn't be enough to persuade me, because what I've noticed is sometimes people make suggestions, and it's fine, like but they don't quite realize, like, from where it's not so simple as sometimes doing X, Y, or Z that someone says that's a good idea. But in this case, sure, it seemed like a promising idea, and I'm sure I ran that by DK and Aaron and said, hey, what do you guys think of this? And I said, here are the reasons why I think this is a good idea, and why the attendee who suggested it said it's a good idea. And they said, yeah, that's awesome. So something like that. Yes, other times it's a matter of, there's also, like, I constantly have in my head, okay, what is in the pipeline? What's coming down? Where do we have, not weakness, but gaps that we want to fill? And so that also affects our fellowship recruitment process. So, like, if I feel like we're too heavy on a particular area or a particular branch of the three branches I mentioned, then I think, okay, we should either have a fellow or just a project that someone can work on, maybe me, maybe someone else in X area. So it's constant balancing. I'm constantly hearing ideas, and I'm thinking about whether they're worth it, and then running that through Aaron and DK.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, sorry, Erik, if you have a question as well, I'm just maybe hogging the mic a little bit here.
No problem. A little bit about ConjectureCon. Can you elaborate a bit? If people want to join, what can they expect? For who is it? What's it about?
Yes. So I should say, first of all, the ticket page is not available yet. I'm still talking with venues in Philly. But basically, it'll be an annual in-person event, and mostly it's fans of Karl Popper and David Deutsch. But anyone's welcome to join, and attendees. It's a lot of talks by attendees. We have remote guest lectures as well. We had one from Michael Shermer this year, and David Deutsch zoomed in as well for a Q&A. That's kind of become a tradition. And Brett Hall gave a guest talk as well. But also, and we have meals together, and we hang out at night at the bar area. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So people are free to give talks about anything they want. I don't care. People can disagree, whatever, that's fine. Rationalists can come, Bayesians can come, communists can come, doesn't matter to me, as long as like you behave yourself. And if you don't behave yourself, of course, there are severe consequences. So that, we've never had that problem. And it's a lot of fun. And it's been growing every year. We've done it, I think, 4 times. So like I said, the first time was 25 people in my living room. And then the next 2 times we did it at a community center in Old City, Philadelphia. And we had about 42 people. And then this past year, we had, like I said, 78, which was crazy. So we had it at a bigger venue at a hotel. And so this goes to people who are telling me, oh, for next year, for ConjectureCon, you should try to get like 150 or 200 people or whatever. And I love the energy for sure. But from my vantage point, you can't just tell a venue, you can't just make up a number of attendees to a venue. They need a good estimate for planning and that sort of thing. And so I was thinking, so we had 78 people. If I could break the 100 people barrier, that would be fantastic. And people tell me like that's too slow of growth. But it's a matter of if I overshoot, then that causes budgetary problems for us. But on the other hand, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I should go a little higher. So these are things, but I definitely want to break more records until eventually we rent out the Eagles Stadium. The Eagles are the football team, American football team in Philly. So eventually I want to rent out the Eagles Stadium. So, and also we had a couple event sponsors last year, which was really cool. And we have formalized that process as well for ConjectureCon, and we're hoping to acquire even more sponsors. Because the reason I might have to get a new venue is because that venue we just barely was able to fit all of us. So if we get 25, 30 more people, we totally need a new venue. And so a bigger and fancier venue means sponsors would really help. And so so that's that.
Well, hopefully there's 2 more you can add to that list from the 2 of us here.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
We can give Bart a wedgie.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have the opportunity, I think, next month as well.
I should say something else that's cool. Yes, we will. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm very excited. Yeah, we have to throw them off the boat. Anyway, that's another topic. I should say also something cool about ConjectureCon, or previously RAFFest, is first of all, it's family friendly. A lot of people bring their kids. And what's cool is a lot of the kids are raised in the taking children seriously paradigm. So you really get to experience what taking children seriously looks like in person and what the kids are like. And in fact, a lot of the kids, maybe not a lot, but some of the kids gave talks. So you had some of them are teenagers. We had a talk by one girl who, I don't want to guess her age wrong, but she was definitely less than like 8 years old. So that was cool.
Wow.
And we had maybe an 11-year-old kid give a talk. Yeah.
Well, that's great. No, I'm always super happy when I see you get your content and obviously just the Institute more broadly, and see all the fellows that are added and kind of it's really exciting to see that happening. Maybe speaking about, because I noticed that you keep using David's last name, I think to avoid confusion to the other David.
Yes.
Mr. DD. So I guess how involved is he, or like is he like, do you consult with him on any of these things, or is it just a standalone thing and he just kind of likes it too? Anything you can share there?
Well, he's one of our advisors. So Conjecture Institute currently has 3 advisors: David Deutsch, the scientist and philosopher Judea Pearl, and the politician / historian / political philosopher Daniel Hannan. And in fact, we have an interview coming out with Daniel Hannan soon. Brett interviewed Conjecture Institute fellow Maria Villaris, and he is next interviewing Daniel Hannan. And I'm interviewing physicist and friend of Conjecture Institute Vlatko Vedral in a few days. So we'll have some good content for December. So David Deutsch is as involved as he wants to be, just like anyone else, any affiliate. So Brett is our ambassador. You had hinted earlier that he's involved. So
Right.
whether it's a fellow or an advisor or an ambassador or a founder like Kedmi and Aaron and me, everyone is as involved as they want to be.
Yeah.
Having said that, I should not deny that I have responsibilities, and if I walked off the face of the earth, that would not be cool. That would probably be immoral. So, but everyone else can do whatever they want.
Yeah. One more thing that I would like to ask you to elaborate, because we've talked now about Conjecture Institute and the conference. You also mentioned the Sovereign Child a couple of times. Can you explain shortly what the book is about for the viewers who don't know it yet?
Yes, The Sovereign Child, again, primary author Aaron Stupple, junior author me, is basically a book about what is taking children seriously, how do you apply it, what are the various questions that come up, what are the philosophical arguments in favor of this of taking children seriously, what are the arguments against not taking children seriously, what does it mean to take a child seriously, how is it different than permissiveness, and this sort of thing. So it's just, if anyone wants to know about taking children seriously, they can pick up The Sovereign Child. By the way, it's available for free now at thesovereignchild.com. You can get a free copy.
Cool, that's nice.
I think
we will definitely add a link in the description. Yeah.
Thank
you. will do that, Erik, because I don't know how to do that.
Yes.
But yes, I think we are both owners of the book as well. So
great.
So yeah. Erik,
so
I don't know if I can. Sorry, go ahead, Logan.
I was just going to say, so that was our first book, and then our second book, Lords of the Cosmos, is an extension of a script that Arjun Kamani, who's also a fellow of ours, and I wrote for Arjun's documentary. So that's kind of part of Conjecture Studios. And then we expanded it into a book, which includes kind of big history and futurology from a knowledge-centered perspective. So that was our second book. And then our two books next year, the first will be Bold Conjectures Volume 1, Select Interviews of David Deutsch. So it's the way this project came about. I was thinking, people read his two books, and then maybe they go on YouTube and see a bunch of interviews and lectures. But wouldn't it be cool to have kind of a third book in which David Deutsch, it's just a bunch of interviews of him over the years, and so you can read that. And then our fourth book, hopefully our second, I think it'll be our second next year, is Bold Conjectures Volume 2. I don't quite know what this subtitle will be, but it's basically original essays by a bunch of mostly physicists, and mostly original. I think there's one that might be a book excerpt, but they're physicists that I chose that'll be on basically a bunch of topics that are either underappreciated by the public in physics, but that are very important, or concepts that are kind of pushing the boundaries, for example, quantum biology, or testing non-classicality with thermodynamics, this sort of thing. And I'm taking inspiration from John Brockman, who used to run edge.org, and he used to ask a question to famous scientists and philosophers, and they would all give their answers. Like, what's the biggest question we don't know, or something like that. And then they would all give their answers, and sometimes he would publish it as a compendium. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm hoping that'll be out at the latest, maybe like fall of 2026. And we have an original essay on constructor theory of gravity, so that'll be cool. And then there's one that's about how the Everett interpretation affects our understanding of the problem between gravity and quantum mechanics, and all sorts of good stuff. I forget why I started saying that. Sorry.
All right, cool. No, what Thomas wanted to say is that I have a 6 week old now, so I just became a father, and so I have bought.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I've bought the Sovereign Child. Because the moment I told Thomas, I also told him, well, I'm going to need new books now, books on education, on fatherhood and children, and that's the only one that he recommended. So, and he said, that's the only one you will need. So I have it lying on my shelf. I haven't read it yet because I want to finish David Deutsch Beginning of Infinity first, as we've finished this podcast. And after that, I want to start reading The Sovereign Child. And we do have something planned on that for the podcast in the future. I'm not going to reveal too much about it just yet, because that will be for a future episode.
That's great to hear. That makes me really happy. And look, if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to ping me Or Aaron, I guess. I don't know if you have his contact, but we're in a group chat now, so you can just hit me up. It's no big deal.
Cool. Another thing that I was wondering, because you all already talked a bit about your physics. How has the new insights and the new knowledge from Popper and David Deutsch, has it influenced your, let's say, your way of thinking and reasoning in physics?
Yes, it has to, generically. As I said before, I was a reductionist and an empiricist, and now I'm not. So maybe I'll give you a practical example. I don't know. The thing is, sometimes you don't know how you would have thought about something before a paradigm shift in your mind, right? But like, uh, I'm torn because I don't know if I want to be mean. But let's say Erik Weinstein, right? He has a purported theory of everything, and I tried to read the paper, and it just reeked of. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't even understand the problem he was trying to solve. It seemed like gobbledygook. And maybe I would have been hoodwinked before I had learned Popper and Deutsch, but now I wasn't. And I don't mean this as a personal attack. Again, I'm not trying to be mean. But I think when it comes to reading scientific papers, the primary question is, what problem is this work trying to solve? And then, of course, there's also the hoodwinking of what I call I probably is a better word, but the fetishization of math, basically.
Right.
So this applies a lot to economics and the social sciences in general. Is like, are they solving a problem, or is this a bunch of explanationless, fancy mathematics? And I think understanding the ideas that we care about can really help with that.
Right. That was one of the more interesting chapters I found in terms of like breaking the fetishization, as you said, of mathematics. And I forget which of the two books it was, because like I said, they like flow together for me. But I remember there's this one was the mathematician's misconception or something, one of the chapters, and it just like blew my mind over. I was like, wait, hold on. So it doesn't need to be like that. It does, like there's you can actually challenge mathematics itself in a sense, and then it also helped me kind of think of things more rationally, for kind of lack of a better term there. But I think what Naval said on one of the podcasts really resonated with me in the sense of that it's not that the beginning of infinity or critical rationalism necessarily gives you the ability to think better than you did before, but it gives you the ability to snuff out bad ideas quicker. At least that's how I kind of use it, or I've found it to be practically most useful to me.
Another way of thinking about it is that deeper ideas rule out more than shallower ideas. So if your epistemology is objectively deeper than alternatives, then more ideas are immediately ruled out than had you had a shallower epistemology. That's another way of saying it.
Right. And I guess what's been your most craziest or most profound memory experience since kind of embarking on this journey, be it from reading the book for the first time to now kind of your presidency here at the Institute?
I think it would have been meeting you two.
Oh man, that's very sweet.
No, my crazy, I don't know. I will say I've had a lot of very interesting experiences, and I've made a lot of friends who I never would have otherwise, including our mutual friend Bart, who we're definitely throwing off the boat, making sure the Mexican alligators eat him, but that's okay. That's, the growth of RatFest has been pretty wild, to be honest. And now Conjecture Con. But I've had so many. Aaron and I go way back, and we've really influenced each other's. So I've never said this publicly, or at least on record, but when I first moved back to Philly, as you can imagine, it was not easy making it as a writer with no full-time job. And Aaron, we became friends not long after I moved back to Philly. And he's like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And I would tell him. And he said, "Oh, I actually went to school with someone who now runs a big ghostwriting organization." So long story short, Aaron kind of saved my life, because I interviewed with them, and that became one of my contract gigs. And that opened the whole world of ghostwriting up to me, which I hadn't previously considered. So that's a life-altering event that happened only because I was interested in these ideas. So that's kind of cool. And that's, I owe Aaron a lot for that. And I will say that founding Conjecture Institute and this whole year has been way we are way more successful than I anticipated, to be frank. And I will say, thank you. Sometimes people say to me like, "Oh, this is a fun like side project thing," and then they kind of see what we're all about. They're like, "Oh, you're serious?" And we're like, "Yes, we are completely serious. Like, we intend to grow a lot, scale a lot." So I hope I answered your question. Again, there are 1,000 examples I can give.
Yeah, no, that helps. And what's next? Like, where do you see the Conjecture Institute, 2030, for example? And I know we can't prophesy, but I'm gonna try and ask you anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is the same thing that we're doing now, but just more and bigger, basically. So,
Right.
for example, I already hinted I want ConjectureCon to keep growing. I imagine, or not, I imagine one of our to-do items for 2026 is to make explicit the three branches: Conjecture Press, Conjecture Studios, Conjecture University, and really have a lot of university courses. Conjecture Press is actually in really good shape, but I would love to increase the number of books we publish from 2 a year to more than that. Although again, 2 a year for now is fine, especially because we make sure, if I may say so, that the books are high quality. Conjecture Studios, I want to be an entire operation with animated videos and documentaries and short films. And I definitely want to scale up our number of fellows. So right now we have about 14. And by 2030, if we had 50 fellows, that would be amazing. And it depends on a lot of factors, obviously, that we can't predict. So yeah, the short answer is just is more and bigger and a better quality of all the same stuff we've been doing.
Yeah. You said that you want to make animated videos. So should I understand it like, I
Yes.
don't know if you know the channel Kurzgesagt or In a Nutshell. They're like these
No.
animated scientific videos on YouTube, and they explain how black holes work, and they have their very
Okay.
own specific animation style, which is very recognizable, and they're also very well researched. So typically you won't find any bullshit there. Is it the type of animation content that you guys want to create?
Yes, I don't know that particular channel, but yes. So we wrote a script for a video that'll explain the Bose-Marletto-Vedral experiment for testing the boundary between quantum mechanics and general relativity, or the quantum world and the classical world, however you want to say it. And so that'll be our opening animated video. So it'll be one of our fellows, who I won't name again because you never know, will present it. A bunch of us wrote the script, and then we have a contractor who is creating the animations for it. And again, that's only one part of Conjecture Studios. I said we want to make more documentaries like Arjun's, and we have. I was saying earlier, I'm reviewing one of our fellows' film scripts, so that'll also be part of Conjecture Studios. But yeah, we want to do a bunch of kind of physics explainer videos. That would be a lot of fun, for sure.
Yeah.
What about merch? Some merch.
People keep asking me. So at Ratfest, we gave out T-shirts that people love. Shout out to Hannah Trimble for making awesome T-shirts. I don't have a T-shirt myself, but I do have a Conjecture Institute tank top, so that's fun. Yeah, we should probably make a merch store at some point and just sell those T-shirts. So that's another 2026 item on my agenda.
Yeah.
Nice.
But people do wear the shirts and they're good.
Yeah. If you're gonna make explainer videos about physics, do you have one planned for the double slit experiment? Because this we already had a discussion on in a previous episode. That's a bit what got me thinking in the first place about David Deutsch IDs, because I read the double slit experiment, and I think it was in a book from Stephen Hawking. I never really understood it, and then I actually met a colleague who also studied physics, and I asked him, well, can you explain it? And I was really hoping that finally I would get like a better explanation how it works. And his answer was like, oh, but it's just like a fundamental way that particles work, and we don't question it. And I was really bummed out by that.
Yeah.
And then I told that to Thomas, and that got the ball a bit rolling, and that led to David Deutsch's beginning of Infinity.
Probably not, but you never know, because I would love our videos to focus kind of in the same vein as Bold Conjectures Volume 2, where I said the essays will be about things that are kind of underappreciated or cutting edge things. I would love Conjecture Studios, our physics explainer videos for Conjecture Studios to be similar. So for example, the BMB experiment I had mentioned, like you won't find that in a quantum mechanics textbook. That's kind of cutting edge stuff. We might do a video on locality, maybe a video on the Heisenberg picture. Yeah, again, you never know. But given that our resources are constrained, I would not want to do a video on the double slit experiment because that's treading old ground. But if we acquire 5 more people to work in Conjecture Studios or something like that, so I'd never rule it out. But I would say don't expect that anytime soon.
Right. All right. I understand.
Erik, we can do one on our next podcast and we can explain it, and then we can submit it to Logan, see if he likes it or not.
Yeah. We'll try to explain it from our point of view.
That's fine.
Yeah. When can people actually expect the first video? Do you have a rough timeline, roadmap?
I thought it would have been out by now, but it keeps undergoing revisions and this sort of thing. So unfortunately, no. Like I said, the script is ready, and we've made progress and things, but I don't know. Sometimes, so this is a very interesting dynamic. Some of the projects that I'm involved with, it's a group project, again under the Conjecture Institute umbrella. Sometimes it's just me, and what I've learned is when it's just me, and this is not anyone's fault. It's faster sometimes when it's just me. But I don't mean to slight anyone. It's just when you're working with a group and people have different ideas, and that can get slowly. So sometimes, especially let's say I'm working on a group project, and the ball's not in my court, then sometimes I just have to say I can't worry about this right now. I'm going to work on what, for example, the Conjecture Institute Encyclopedia, or Bold Conjectures Volumes 1 and 2. So yeah, that's where we are with the video. I hope I didn't. I don't mean to slight anyone. See, I'm a bit paranoid.
Don't worry about it, man. We only have I would say we only want progress in the world, right? So we want it for everybody. So I guess what's the future like in terms of progress? Where do you stand right now? I mean, philosophically and morally speaking, and I guess our duty to be optimistic, I believe, as Popper deemed it. Where do you stand on that currently, like today, literally? And I know obviously the Conjecture Institute is a part of bringing that optimism to the world. So that's a tremendous endeavor in itself. But I guess, are you optimistic about the future and I guess mankind, civilization more broadly, and are those problems we'll be solving? That's the question.
Yes, I'm philosophically optimistic. There are some areas I'm more excited about maybe than others. For example, I've been listening to some podcasts about I don't know how it is over in your neck of the woods, but in America, there's kind of this argument now about AI. Is it a bubble? Is it not? And I don't know enough to know if it's a bubble or not. As I was saying before we recorded, I hate technology. Not that I hate technology, obviously, but psychologically and personally, I don't like change really. I like using Microsoft Word and the same phone if possible. So I don't really use AI. Having said that, I really hope it's not a bubble, because if it is a bubble, America's in trouble with the debt and the deficit. Although AI might not even be enough to solve that. But I think we could use. There's a lot of anxiety and pessimism in America right now, and we could really use a technological win. That would be nice. Having said that, there are other positive trends, but positive trends don't tend to encourage people. Unfortunately, it's more like discrete events give people a jolt of optimism. In science, again, I like to think Conjecture Institute is doing its part. There's a lot of stultification in science, stagnation, but our people are pushing the ball forward, not only in constructor theory, but also with the Heisenberg picture of quantum mechanics, with Everettian quantum mechanics, Carlos doing artificial general intelligence. And I think a lot of people are living lives that would have been impossible even only 15 years ago, thanks to the internet and decentralizing a lot of these things. So that's good. Politically, things are not that great. Not everyone, but ideas of libertarianism are on the back foot for sure. So that's not good. And then Yeah, so I would say I'm optimism, but we could use more freedom and good ideas, which is what we're all doing. Like we really need more. There's a lot of things that are kind of what I think of as self-inflicted wounds. Like we don't
Right.
have to be so self-hating and relativistic and statist and empiricist. These are all self-inflicted.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay. And so, what's your bet on AGI? When are we going to welcome our first um, intellectual brethren into this world?
I'm not answering that.
Didn't think you were. I had to try anyway. All right. Erik, did you have any other questions?
Uh, in the a bit what you said about the negative trends and thoughts, yeah, where does that come from? Do you think like these self-inflicted wounds and these negative views that people like burden on their own shoulders? Where does that originate from, according to you?
Um, it's a very interesting historical question. A lot of historians will trace it back to the early 1900s. But you could go back to the Enlightenment, and there were people who resisted the Enlightenment, and probably you could trace that evolutionarily all the way to today. It just takes different forms. So basically, there have always been ideas, basically that say progress is bad. Maybe would be one way to summarize it. And then they just survive in different forms. And then the question is, how do you combat it? And one problem is the people who disagree with those ideas very often are not confident in their position. This is something that I think objectivism does really well. Is it's a self-confident philosophy. Um, no one likes an ambivalent salesman, or an ambivalent politician. And the enemies of the West, whether domestically or foreign enemies, are very confident in their ideas. So we need to also be confident. Some people say the ideas originated in the academy. I don't think that's correct. I think the academies are being institutions. They are catalysts for ideas for sure. But I think the idea started before the academy.
Yeah, I understand. It reminds me a bit. I remember from our time in high school, where the first lessons we had about like anti-progress were indeed from the early industrial age, where people who used to build stuff themselves, for example, a carpenter would make a chair and he would put all of his soul and passion and knowledge in there. But as they move to the factory and they just work on a tiny little thing, yeah, there's no link between what they do and their passion. So there is like this big disconnect uh, between the output of their labor and what they are actually doing. And I think those were like the first times that I heard stories about, let's call it anti-progress from industrialization. So if I understand you correctly, yeah, what's happening today is more like an evolution of that.
Yeah, I don't know about that example specifically. Certainly, during the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of anxiety as well. But even before that, you just have people freaking out at new ideas. The Jews kicked out Maimonides. They burned what's his name, Bruno, at the stake. Um, the philosopher Stefan Molyneux had an interesting phrase one time. Someone said, "Why weren't there more Socrates-type gadflies in ancient history?" And he said there were. They just got their heads chopped off, and then they weren't in the history books.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's a selection effect where society is dynamic enough now that at least we make a record of when we kill the dissidents, so to speak. That wasn't always the case. Before, it was just a priori, if you are disagreeing, you are an enemy of civilization and need to be discarded.
Right.
And they thought that was the right thing to do.
Right. Is that what I think Deutsch also once said, like you would actually apply your creativity to be a better version of what society would expect of you, so to avoid kind of being snuffed out. So paradoxically, if you were more conservative or more leaning towards the exact culture, you would do it precisely not to be detected as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Maybe a final question for me. what is creativity to you, Logan?
Oh, this is one of these. This is like AGI. I never think about these things, but to me, it's the ability. I agree with Deutsch. It's the capacity to generate an arbitrary sequence of ever improving explanations. Would be one way of putting it.
Gotcha.
But I think you asked about AGI earlier. That I think this is just the same question.
Yeah. Right. Then what do you think we or yourself like should be applying that creativity on? Do you think there are certain, I guess, moral guidelines or certain, I guess, ways of life that you would say are more, I guess, prone to that, or is it from a libertarian kind of, I guess, critical rationalist perspective, where you let people kind of pursue their own interests, but then within certain moral like kind of, I guess, moral rules, if you will, or explanations that ultimately are better for progress in a sense. So maybe, sorry, a long-winded question to get to the end here, which is, what is the next moral discovery that like we discovered slavery was really a shitty thing to do. Like, do you think there's a next one coming up that has there recently came on? And I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, taking children seriously.
Gotcha. Set that up for you there. All right.
That's a great final question. Before I ask my final question, I want to thank you, Logan, for your time and being on the podcast and all of your interesting insights. And so you talked about Conjecture Institute, you talked about Conjecture Conference. Where can people find you if they want to learn more, if they want to order the books? Do you have some websites, some social media accounts? We will add them in the description.
Yeah, first of all, it's ConjectureCon, not Conjecture Conference, but I understand that's not a big deal. Yeah, I mean, just go to www.conjectureinstitute.org to see what we're up to, or you can DM me on Twitter at ChipkinLogan, or you can DM the Conjecture Institute account. I forgot the handle of that, sorry. Or you can email me, logan@conjectureinstitute.org. Yeah, I'm pretty accessible. And that is it. I think that answers your question, right? I forgot your question.
Absolutely. We will add all of those in the description of this video, including the link where people can get a free copy of the book, so they can find you, they can reach out, and they can start having interesting conversations with each other.
Yeah. And also, also huge thank you, Logan. Really appreciate you doing this and spending some time with us here. And just on a personal note, like, you've been, I guess, very critical also in my journey in, let's say, the Deutsch philosophies and critical rationalism. So, obviously a personal thank you there, in being, I guess, a resource as well to reach out to when things get a little bit challenging to understand. Let's put it that way.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you both for having me on. It was fun.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
And see you next time.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.